I just want to say it is remarkable to hear what Kevin has announced. I mean, Midtown Atlanta, building on what the mayor said, is really one of the most exciting, most dynamic places, not just in the United States, but around the world. And it's great to be back at this venue, back at this gathering. I was here with you like 3 or 4 weeks before COVID hit. Remember COVID? And in that time, what we have seen is this city is leapfrogging other cities in this country, becoming a hub not just of growth and connectivity, but of livability and walkability. I was here about 6 weeks ago, walking the Beltline over the weekend. And Midtown Atlanta and Midtown Alliance has played an enormous role in this. I mean, we talk about metropolitan areas, we talk about major cities and counties. We're talking about 1.2 square miles. It's these small places, micro places, that in many ways are leading the country towards a new path of innovation. This notion of let's be bold, everything you've done up to now, your market power, your social networks are about to be put to the test. What I'm about to talk about is a speech entitled Navigating the New Disorder. And I think everyone in this room will know what I'm talking about. We are living through a moment of just a bewildering array of disruptive and destructive dynamics. Some still unleashed by the pandemic, some long-standing, some catalyzed by the policy decisions of the past 8 weeks. In some ways, this uncertain period is unfolding literally hour by hour, day by day, week by week. In my view, and it's the context for which we need to think about what is essentially one of the world's leading innovation districts, we are ushering in a different kind of global economy and a different kind of federal republic. And some of this reflects a convergence between the political parties. I know that's hard to believe, but if you think about Trump 1.0 and Biden and Trump 2.0, what they share is a view is that after decades of globalization and offshoring and outsourcing, the U.S. needs to reshore, we need to remilitarize, we need to assert our dominance in critical technologies. We need to change our relationship with China. But there's something else going on right now, and it's going to affect this place, this city, the counties that surround me, this metro, this state. We are seeing a rollback of government capacity, spending, and investment, which will lead to probably the most radical devolution of responsibility in the history of our republic, just as we're about to have our 250th anniversary. I've been trying to find historic precedents for that. You can think about the Reagan cutbacks from 1980, you can think about when Newt Gingrich came in, but that was child's play. If you think about when Reagan came in, they cut about $140 billion in current spending, current dollars. When Gingrich came in, it was more like $540 billion. We're talking in the trillions. So you have to look at cinema to think about how do we navigate through this period. So of course I've gone back to the first Godfather, right? Okay, and there's a scene in the first Godfather. Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, is playing out his strategy to take over the mafia, assassinate the other leaders of the 5 families, and he turns to Tom Hagen, played by Robert Duvall, and he says, listen, you're no longer going to be our consigliere, you're going to become our lawyer in Vegas, of all places, because you're not a wartime consigliere, and things are going to get rough. My message to you today, and you're one of the few places that are able to lead the way, is things are getting very rough. And as you think about all the excitement and the progress and the momentum and the announcement that was made today, you're going to also have to think about how you organize at a comparable scale, with skill, with discipline, with judgment, and with toughness, Now, you didn't precipitate the chaos as in The Godfather, and there's no one person who's going to be your wartime consigliere. What's going to take places like Atlanta into the future is a network of institutions and intermediaries and leaders in the public, private, civic sectors who can basically chart a path forward. I think what's about to happen in this country is we're going to have to understand what are the major forces underway and how to mitigate the harm. We're going to have to seize on opportunities, and there are many opportunities that we can talk about, and I will. And then we're going to have to think about something that we've never actually had to think about. How do we defederalize a modern republic? How do we change how we think about the design, finance, and delivery of so much of what makes this country and other countries great? So I'll talk about the following three things very quickly. What's the new disorder? Like, what the hell is going on in the country right now, right? What is the impact on people and places? Let's just get real clear about what's happening or about to happen, and then what do you do about it? How do you get through this period in such a way that you're stronger, you're more resilient for a large number of, large share of your population? So first of all, new disorder. Let's zoom out for a second. And because you're surrounding Georgia Tech and AI and the next generation of industry, it's really critical to zoom out for a second. So what is happening around the world? First, decades after the fall of the Berlin Wall, this world is a very dangerous place, right? We saw it with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We see it in our rising tensions with China. And again, as I said before, after decades of outsourcing, offshoring, globalization, we need to make things again in this country. We need to reassert our dominance in shifting technologies. Second, the pandemic showed us that supply chains were too long, too stretched for a whole bunch of different reasons. And that has made us reliant for basically production of life-saving necessities, as well as components for critical parts of our economy, is diminished and undermined that. Third, we're living through a period of technological acceleration. The hype about artificial intelligence is real. It has now moved to deployment. And this city, this space is actually a nucleus, is a foundation, is a platform for it. But it's not just AI. It's quantum computing. It's genomics. It's gene and cell therapy. This is a period of technological acceleration. And finally, there's a quantum leap in energy demand because of data centers and AI factories, but of also broader forces. This has basically precipitated a kind of economic nationalism in our country. It's responded to a prior world where there was a dramatic geography of discontent. And so whether we're talking about Trump 1.0 or Biden or 2.0, there is a bipartisan commitment. It's really critical to understand what underlies so much of this, to reshoring, remilitarizing, and reasserting our dominance. And so what you're going to see under this Trump administration, as you saw under the Biden administration, is a substantial investment in our military, which has a dramatic effect on this place. But there are huge differences, and let's be very clear about that. Biden used investments to basically spur the reshoring of manufacturing. Trump is using tariffs. Biden tried to reinvigorate NIH, NSF, medical research. There are very worrying signs about that, not just with regard to R&D, but entitlement. Biden was committed to decarbonizing the economy. We know that's not on the plate. And Biden was committed to basically help the federal government rebuild the country. We're now seeing through the Department of Government Efficiency a rollback in workforce and in programs. This is going to lead, not just in the short term, to a lot of disruption, as it already is. It's going to lead to a different kind of republic. It's going to lead to a republic where cities and counties and metropolitan areas actually need to lead on broad segments of domestic policy. So these are macro forces, and macro forces have always had metropolitan effects. If you think about the rise of Silicon Valley, that basically came out of the Second World War and Cold War science. If you think about what happened to the Midwest, the heartland, that happened because we deindustrialized over many decades. So we're now about to see a major shift in the fundamentals of the American economy. And we're already seeing places that are beginning to find what they have, what their fundamentals are, being revalued. If you go to places like St. Louis or Newport News, Norfolk, or Dayton, Ohio, these are basically places that are the foundation of our military-industrial complex. They're seeing growth because of reshoring and remilitarization. If you go to Columbus, Ohio, or Syracuse, New York, or Phoenix, Arizona, they're the epicenter of the semiconductor reshoring as well. This place, and I'm talking not just about the city of Atlanta, the Atlanta Metro, you're at the epicenter of this major shift, because it's not just about macro forces affecting metropolitan areas, it's about macro forces affecting micro places. Little places, 1.2 square miles, within which are packed advanced research, global companies, domestic companies, small and medium-sized enterprises, and the quality of place and transportation that makes it all hum. So what is happening right now in the US is we are scrambling very fast to understand how do you make sense not just of tariffs or potential cuts in NIH or NSF or potential cuts in entitlement or reductions in federal workforce or changes in immigration. How do you make sense of all of this so that you can continue as a major American district, city, county, and metro to move forward? So here are my recommendations about how to proceed. And again, this room represents a network of leaders. Cities are not governments, right? Cities are not like the federal and state government. They're not organized by vertical agencies. They're networks of public, private, and civic leaders. And when they come together, they can problem solve. Whether it's the challenges we had during COVID, whether it's the challenges we have with homelessness and housing, which this city is leading on, or whether it's the challenges, some of which we can anticipate and some of which we can't because of what's happening at the federal level today. What do? 3 things. First of all, and I'm talking about all levels, the district, the city, the county, the metro, conduct a stress test. Okay, this is what our financial institutions do. Because as markets gyrate, which they are today, banks, other investment companies need to figure out how do we make through all this, right? So you need a stress test. You need to conduct it at the level of individual cities and counties and the collective area of metropolitan areas. What will it mean if there is a rollback of major proportions? Because what has made this district strong, uber strong, right, is the proximity to Georgia Tech, and as I'll talk about, or Emory for that matter, what has made Georgia Tech and Emory strong is they sit on a platform of federal R&D. New York City, the controller, about a week after the election, basically said, here's an initial stress test. They did the number crunching, right, which you have to do, and basically said, we receive in New York City, largest American city, $100 billion every year in federal aid. Actually, that was a conservative estimate. Now, about $54 billion of it was in healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid, Affordable Care Act, $33 billion in Social Security, SSI, the STAP program, nutrition. About $8 billion was in funding for city agencies like the Department of Education and Department of Housing and Urban Development. Another $5.5 billion was for public hospitals, the City University of New York, the New York City Housing Authority. They did the math. They did the math. They didn't count actually all the R&D going to Columbia and NYU. They didn't count necessarily all the federal workers, but they did a first cut, and they basically said, we're vulnerable, right? Because if you start thinking about 10% cuts or 20% cuts, that fundamentally changes the ability of the major city in the United States, the major metropolis, 8.5 million people in the city, 18 million in the metro, to function. Atlanta, Midtown Atlanta, what does your stress test look like? I'll just give you a few numbers just to start. The federal government allocates more than 11 billion in contracts, what they buy in goods and services every year. This metro is ranked third in what the Department of Health and Human Services buys every year. And you get a substantial amount of funding from the Department of Defense and other agencies as well. Do a stress test. Second, figure out where your economy is going. The disruption that is being precipitated by the federal government is not the only disruption underway. Again, think about what I said before. The world's a more dangerous place. Supply chains need to shrink. Technology's accelerating. Artificial intelligence, obviously, at the front of that. Because of COVID, downtowns have remote work, hybrid work. It's changing literally how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis. So what does your economy look like, not today, but in 3 years, in 5 years, in 7 years, in 10 years? And how do you plan, how do you design, how do you deliver projects that are get you to your full potential? A few stats that we worked on with the city government last year. Georgia Tech, #1 university for industrial manufacturing programs in the United States at a time when we're reshoring. #3 for undergraduate engineering programs. #5 ranked for artificial intelligence. Emory, one of the largest medical research universities in the world, obviously threatened now, but there's possibilities to build off that base. Georgia Tech is not just about undergrad and grad. It has sectors, many funded by the Department of Defense, around research, around manufacturing, around the application of robotics. It is no surprise that what is happening in this 1.2 square miles is so profound, because you're sitting right next to, on top of, two of the premier universities, not in the United States, in the world. They're at the cutting edge of innovation. And therefore, they have the secret sauce that so many others need to be here. So Tech Square, visited that yesterday with Greg King from Georgia Tech, phenomenal. But then there's Science Square, and then there's Pittsburgh Yards, and then there's Pond City Market, and then there's the Southside Industrial Park, and then there's what's happening in anticipation of the World Cup. This city is remarkable. And I travel all through the U.S. and outside the U.S. Atlanta is a remarkable, distinctive place, and you're basically leveraging. So what's your next economy playbook off that base? Whatever is happening today with the growth of companies, with the attraction of companies, with the expansion of companies, jobs, quality jobs, manufacturing throughout the city, 2x, 3x. You're going to have to basically become stronger given what the feds are doing. Last piece. You've got to think, and we all need to think about, what is the institutional mix and collaboration mix look like in our cities to basically survive and thrive. What this city government's doing around housing gives us a signal of where Midtown should go. The city has taken European models around public assets, that's the land and the buildings that governments own, and they have created a new urban development corporation. Think about a new institution so that you can unify and integrate this incredible amount of property that the government owns, not just the city government, not just the county governments, public housing, transportation, public utilities, and they're basically putting all that in the service of the production of housing, affordable housing. That is institutional reform that no other city in the United States is doing. So yes, you're riding a market wave, you're riding an innovation wave. It is incredible, the strength and the platform here. But they have basically, in the city government, realized it's not sufficient to use the old models or institutions we have. We need a new one. So what would that mean if Midtown Alliance was going to move in that direction, if Midtown Atlanta is going to move in that direction? You've got to basically move across all these remarkable entities that you have in this small geography. Your universities, your companies, your startups, your retail, your housing. Collaboration in this way sounds like an easy thing to do. We all know it's tough, right? It is really hard to pull everyone together, coming from different perspectives, coming from different walks in life. I think it's time to do the stress test, to think about where the economy is going, but to think about what this entity, remarkable, one of the best business improvement districts in the United States, bar none, what kind of additional powers, what kind of additional resources, what kind of additional capacities does it need, whether it's around public space, whether it's around cooperative structures, whether it's around your broader procurement economy. The bottom line is you are well situated, probably more than just about all U.S. cities and all innovation districts, frankly, to survive and thrive through what will be perceived as the most disruptive period, I think, in the last 100 years. And the question as you think through the other side of this is how do you take this incredible platform you have, a foundation, right, that you've maximized in so many ways, and how do you basically build from here? So to go back from The Godfather, you need a wartime consigliere. Maybe Midtown Alliance and Midtown Atlanta is the nucleus of this. You have an opportunity now to chart your future forward in ways that 5, 7, 10 years from now, the city of Atlanta, the metropolitan area of Atlanta, and the state of Georgia will be grateful for. Thank you very much.